Each morning of November is like a breath of fresh air. Previous day's disappointments are washed away and quickly forgotten. In a moment, luck can turn on a dime. A fresh blanket of crunchy leaves coats the forest floor like a thin sheet of ice across a pond. The disruptive sounds of that pane being shattered by a charging buck can send even the calmest heart into adrenaline overload. On the morning of November 2nd, Jared Mills makes his way into the timber in search of a rut-crazed buck.
Good morning. It is November 2nd, and it is an absolutely beautiful morning. Cold, high pressure, frost on the ground. Couldn't draw up anything better really for this day. We've been settled in for a little while now. Gavin and I came in, hung 2 stands, and this is a new property. Decided to switch it up this morning. Come see if we can get on a different buck. We did a rattling sequence here just a little bit ago and had a pretty 8 come by at 40 yards. That's the only deer we've seen so far. We can't see a long ways in here, but actually for this property it's so thick, this is one of the better visibility spots other than being on a field or a plot. I gotta thank the deer on their feet this morning looking for does, so just whether or not we're in the right spot. We had a nice little flurry of activity there, basically starting around 9:30. That buck, we could hear him snort wheezing back behind us. It sounded like he was tearing up a scrape. And it's so thick right here. I probably should have just had my bow, but instead I had my binos to wait and see what buck it was. And he went through probably at 35-40 yards. And it is a buck that we have pictures of, and I think he's mature. I was on the fence about shooting him, but I think if he would have came and given me a chip shot, the way this hunt unfolded, it'd be really hard to pass him up. Man, it's so cool just watching this activity. Chase and grunt and snort wheezing. Even heard a doe bleating there. It was a heck of a morning for sure. Probably the best morning, or probably the best all-around hunt I've had so far this year. And I think we could hang in here and watch deer probably all day. It's a cool little spot. I'm gonna mark this tree for future reference, but unfortunately, like I said, I gotta get down and get some work done, so it's a fun morning to be in a tree for sure.
While Jared heads for the office, 45 miles to the west, Max Mongrello is heading to the field for his first hunt of this magical month.
Alright, well here we go. November 2nd, evening hunt. Again, I say this every time, but the anticipation is so high. Josh and I are on the farm that Grant had that really great encounter with that deer in early October. That is about 250 yards here to my north where that encounter took place. And that day that we saw all those deer in that alfalfa, that's that field that's right over my shoulder here. So the game plan tonight was to once again bring the decoy, but sit way back up here on this ridge and just try to figure this farm out a little bit. It's kind of an observation sit, but I did bring the decoy in an attempt to call if I need to give them something to look at. So we're sitting kind of in the middle of this giant wide open area. It's a cut bean field, but for some reason there's a ton of beans left, more than I've ever seen, all over the edges and even out in the middle. So there's a lot of food. Ethan and I were back on this farm about a week ago and saw a pile of deer just kind of out in the open, feeding back and forth between the alfalfa and the beans. So I'm actually way more confident sitting in this tree than you would think, being kind of in the middle of all this acreage. So as we were just kind of getting ready, getting comfortable, we did have a pretty good look to be a 3-year-old. I thought at first that was a mature deer, but I think after looking at him for a little while, I think he looked to be a 3-year-old, but he's a nice frame deer. He got my blood pumping right off the gate, so we're excited. We've got 2 deer already in the alfalfa, and like I said, we can see a ton of country, so I expect to see a bunch of deer tonight, and hopefully at least lay eyes on a good one.
Oh boy. Oh, he might be though. You got him. That's a different block. What is going on? Well, Josh and I just got back to the truck after tearing that set down, and we are still high-fiving all the way back here at the truck. That was probably the single coolest encounter I've ever had with a deer of decent maturity. I really am not sure what I feel about like that deer. I definitely never really thought about shooting him, but I think he could easily be a 4-year-old, so that was incredible. Like I said, Josh and I are still jacked up about it. This farm that Grant and I've got over here is spectacular. The amount of deer in this neighborhood, it blows my mind every single time we sit here. I bet Josh and I saw at least 20, and even as we lost camera light, there were still deer piling in. So it's not a farm, or especially that tree, that's not a spot you want to hunt often, just because you're gonna have to walk past deer on your way out and you probably booger it up pretty bad. But for a high pressure afternoon, you can't ask for any more. A bunch of deer. You saw 5 different bucks, I believe, and I think that's that same deer that we saw right off the bat
kind of made a big circle, I'm sure, just cruising a little bit, and came back. And it was crazy when he hopped that fence. He still hadn't seen that decoy, and then he was unsure about it. But then as soon as he got in, you know, in his bubble, it was on. I bet he snort wheezed 6 or 7 times. It was just so cool. Josh and I kept kind of looking at each other out of the corner of our eye. So spectacular afternoon, and hopefully tomorrow morning is just as good as action. We're headed back in to a bedding area on another permission farm with hopes of punching my first tag of the year.
On the morning of November 3rd, Mike Reed settles into a tree stand on his newly acquired property that borders the river farm.
It's Wednesday, November 3rd, and it's a beautiful, frosty morning. Ryan and I are down on the river bottom farm. We're set up on the downwind side of a big doe bedding area. I call this area the Central Timber. This is on this farm that butts up against Jared and I's. And this is actually the southernmost part of Dak's range in my mind. Last year I had him on a few cameras in here, and this year I've had one picture of him on this lane. It was in the middle of the night in the last couple of weeks, so he has been, you know, dipping down in this area. We've already had a good hunt so far, and it's only 8 o'clock. We started off the morning with seeing a deer that I know pretty well. I've just called him the Big 8. He is, he's a 6-plus-year-old. I don't really know how old he is, but last year he looked like he was super mature. You know, I called him at least 5. I bet he was older than that last year, though. And we actually encountered him twice last year, once on the South Plot, and he and the black-eyed 10, who was 5.5 last year, kind of squared off, and he walked him off. And then we filmed him once late season. And he's been very daylight active in this area over the last 2 weeks. So I'm not surprised that we already saw him, and I imagine we're going to see him again today. Right as it was breaking daylight, it looked like he stood up out of his bed right here in front of us. He had frost on his back, and he worked to scrape, and then he walked 30 yards and worked to scrape, and walked 30 yards and worked to scrape. It just, you can tell he's feeling it. We had him at 45 yards. It was low light. And then he just worked his way off. We had a chase off in the distance that actually headed towards Jared and I's place. And then I've had a couple does working around. In fact, I see a couple of them coming in the timber right now. We're going to sit back and enjoy the morning. It's just absolutely beautiful. We have wood ducks flying, and just all the animals are up and moving around. So hopefully Dak makes an appearance, and we'll see if that Big 8 tests his luck today or not. Ryan wants me to shoot that sucker. There's like 7 does right there. That's the broken G2 buck right there. You see it? saw that little buck.
Still riding the highs of the previous evening's encounter, 100 miles to the southwest, Max Mongrello is back on stand, hoping for a repeat performance.
It is the morning of November the 3rd, and Josh and I are tucked up in a tree on the permission farm down south that Grant and I hunt. I've been wanting to sit this tree now for 2 years and never had a chance to last year after tagging out in the middle of October, so never made it to this tree last year, but hung it last summer and just knew it's in a great spot with all the trails, and it's still in this giant funnel that connects these two big blocks of timber in this neighborhood. This morning when I woke up, I had a picture of a deer I call T-Swoop, a deer that Grant and I have probably got at number 2 on the list right now, behind Eddie. I had a 4:15 a.m. picture about 100 yards from where we're sitting, so walking in was pins and needles. I was terrified the whole time, and sure enough, after just climbing up in the tree, I just pulled the camera bag up. T-Swoop walked about 25 to 30 yards up under us. There's nothing we can do. We didn't have the camera out yet, and we didn't have camera light regardless, so just a minute ago I tried rattling right off the rip to see if I could turn him, but I think it was a little too long after he had left, so I'm not saying he can't come back, but it takes some wind out of my sails a little bit, so regardless, we're going to sit in here for a few hours this morning. It feels incredible. It's probably not even 30 degrees. Thermal should start rising up out of this creek bottom, so we're going to sit it out, hopefully for some good action. Just about came together. I'm still tore up, if you can't tell. Just shaking like a leaf. Josh looked at me earlier, and we heard something. He looked at me and said it sounded like a deer coughing or something. I couldn't figure it out. Finally, I spotted some does running around back here in this field behind us. I knew there had to be a buck with them, and sure enough, they came tearing down through here. And maybe it's just that I'm all tore up, but I don't know if I know what deer that is. I think I got a decent idea, but I'm gonna have to look at some pictures. All I know is that's a shooter all day long. You cannot ask for anything better than that. Just an hour into the hunt, I mean, just tearing through here. Those does turned to try to get away from him or try to leave, headed back to the north, it looked like. So when he got behind some stuff, I threw a Snort Wheeze out in hopes that maybe I could turn him. I didn't think it would really probably work just because he he had the real thing in front of him, so he definitely heard it, and every time they would stop, when he'd get a chance, he'd sit there and scrape and paw the ground. That was wild. That is what November is all about. I think there's a really good chance he still comes by, and if not, it's definitely going on right now, so we're gonna sit it out for a while for sure, so. With any luck, that deer will come back through here, maybe push those does back through and actually stop in a shooting like this time. He was all inside a bow range all day long, but didn't have any clear lanes, so I may have to sit down before I fall out of this tree.
Max's early action proves to be short-lived. His hunt begins and ends with the beautiful buck that failed to present a shot opportunity. Back on the New River farm, Mike Reed is still enjoying a beautiful morning filled with steady movement.
It's about 11:30 now. We had really good activity the last hour or so. We saw 4 different cruising bucks. One was kind of nudging a doe, making scrapes. We had some just come right on the stand here, drink out of the water. The wind is switching, and now it's kind of coming out of the south, starting to pick up a little bit. That's not good for this set, so it's time to get down anyway. We're gonna make a move back to the home farm and make a sit for Chubbs tonight. So we'll see you guys this afternoon.
Also on stand in Iowa, 100 miles to the northwest, Zach Larson is out, hoping to get in on the November buck parade.
Well, good morning, guys. It is officially November. It is finally here. This is our first sit of November this year for the 2021 season. So to say we're pumped is an understatement. As the sun started coming up here and it started to get daylight, we glanced over our shoulder and noticed a bunch of deer in the field. And there appears to be a giant. We don't know what it is. We have no idea what deer it is. But from what we can see, he's very big. Right now, as we speak, he's bedded down with a bunch of does right in the cut cornfield directly behind us, about 200 yards. And it's kind of making me nervous because he's right downwind of us. All those deer are directly downwind of us. So we're kind of hoping they swing out and around us and hopefully catch that scent trail, and maybe it'll pull him off that doe if we're lucky. It's fixing to be an awesome morning. Well, just for a little quick update here, so as you could see in the footage, that buck kind of got up and nudged that doe around. Well, they ended up going back into the bedding, back over my shoulder about 500 or 600 yards, it looks like. But I am like 99.9% sure that it's a deer that I call Sticker 10 that I was expecting to see back this year. We actually filmed him from the road like 4 mornings ago with our phones. That's all we had in the truck at the point. It's awesome to see him around. Looks to me as if he's stuck on a hot doe. about 5 or 6 bucks behind him, just kind of waiting like puppies getting a treat. It was cool to see that and how they act. So we're just waiting for him to get up on his feet and hopefully come right in here and check the decoy out.
While Zach tries to figure out how he can get the giant frame buck into bow range, 75 miles to the south, Brandon Whitten's morning is just getting started.
Just standing out there. I think I'm gonna try to grunt at him.
He pretty much ran straight. He ran straight out. We got a dead deer right here. Oh wow, here he is. Yeah, he didn't make it very far at all. Look at that thing. This morning couldn't have been more perfect. I mean, that coyote almost ruined the morning, but he come back in and it was just picture perfect. This is the first time I've ever decoy hunted a deer, bucks. I'm pretty sure I videoed this deer the other night. I lost light in the field and I had him working up out of the bottom and he was coming to the decoy the other evening and it just started losing light real quick, and then I had another buck on this side of him and he started veering off and he ended up chasing the other buck off and he never did come to the decoy. So, but anyways, it was a fun hunt this morning.
As Brandon begins the task of hauling out his harvest, 150 miles to the east, Mike Reed is making his way back to his home farm in the search of Chubbs.
It's about 3:30 and we have made the move back to the home farm. Decided to come back and give Chubbs another try. We're back in the skybox set overlooking these turnips. We've got a favorable wind for this set. It's a south-southwest, which blows it right back to where we park. I pushed it a little bit the last few times I hunted it with a west-northwest, and I think some of our scent could have gotten up this one draw, even though I think Chubbs and most of the deer come out of that bowl. Anyway, so we'll see if the movement's any different. I did have Chubbs in daylight this morning on the clover plot again. He's now done that twice in the last 4 or 5 days. And prior to those, he was daylight active down here on this food plot in the afternoons. So I'd like to think that means that he's bedded close. So this time of year, he could have just been cruised on and not be anywhere near here. But I'm holding out hope that he came in this timber and he's going to follow some does out into the food plot tonight. He's not been on any other cameras. He wasn't on camera the last couple days, and then even this morning, he wasn't on any other one. So my suspicion is that he's kind of been off the farm chasing does somewhere, but we shall see. It's him. He's under the cherry tree.
What is it?
There's a buck down below us. And I've got the sunlight on me. That's that southwest wind on the cherry tree. And I got dirt on the cherry tree. And now he's 20 yards from the cherry tree set. The wind is blowing out of the east.
I know.
I was going to call to him, but it's blowing right at him right now.
Hopefully it'll kick back here in a second.
He's walking down this way. Looks like he's watching the houses. That's pretty awesome to see him. He is a huge deer. We actually had an 8-point come right down along the creek, and he was looking down at him. He kept looking over at the houses. Sometimes the guy that lives there is out and about in the yard, and that'll spook the deer a little bit. I hope that's all it was. And he went, oddly enough, he walked 20 yards from the cherry tree stand. When we spotted him, he was standing under that stand. I can't seem to pick the right spot, but he's dipping down into this bowl that he seems to like to go into, so I'm hoping he'll pop out, down here in the turnip plot. The wind is also being a little temperamental. It's supposed to be southwest. And there's a couple times where it's kicking straight out of the east. There's a couple times it's even going north. I thought about getting down, but I got to work the next 2 days, and I thought I would at the risk of, you know, bumping him, I thought we'd come make this sit and take our chances. You never know. I wasn't even sure if he wasn't behind us over here. So anyway, very cool to see him not in the brush, get a good look at him. And the night is still young. It's only 4:45, so maybe he'll pop out down here in the food pod and we'll have a shot at him yet.
Gavin and I came in, hung 2 stands, and this is a new property. Decided to switch it up this morning. Come see if we can get out a different buck. I think if he would have came and given me a chip shot, the way this hunt unfolded, it'd be really hard to pass him up.
Well, Josh and I just got back to the truck after tearing that set down, and we are still high-fiving all the way back here at the truck. That was probably the single coolest encounter I've ever had with a deer of decent maturity.
That's pretty awesome to see him. He is a huge deer. Oddly enough, he walked 20 yards from the cherry tree stand. When we spotted him, he was standing under that stand. I can't seem to pick the right spot, but he's dipping down into this bowl that he seems to like to go into, so I'm hoping he'll pop out.
And there appears to be a giant. We don't know what it is. We have no idea what deer it is.
The first wave of early November action yet again lives up to the hype. Several encounters and a great harvest have the entire team excitedly looking forward to tomorrow. The stage is set and the forecast looks ideal. The curtains have drawn back, revealing the true November. It's everything we've so desperately craved. The starting gun is fired and the race has begun. Tomorrow we will once again be chasing November.